Long before I became a creative professional, I was a prop for other creative professionals, mainly photographers and fashion designers. Let's talk about my unremarkable modeling career that lasted roughly from 2008 to 2017. Maybe someone will get something out of this, whether you're an aspiring model or you just get joy out of helping me grow the size of my head by hearing me talk about myself. This will be a continuation of the recent content experimentation in which I exploit the fact that my design topic videos are regularly outperformed by the videos that are at best loosely related to design. So I was going to tell the story chronologically, but I figured I could be more concise if I break this down into 8 categories: the universe, how I got into modeling, photo shoots, fashion shows, promotional, acting, frustrations, and last gasp. Let's rewind back to late 2006. I was a junior college student working at one of those big box hardware places. You know, the orange apron one where no one helps you find anything.
Can you tell me where I can find extension cords?
Aisle 25.
I was just there.
26.
There is no 26.
15.
I had an attractive coworker who was a cashier at the contractor desk, which is right next to the lumber department cash register that I was often tethered to during closing shifts. One night I get a ring at my register's phone, and when I pick up, I hear a flirty, "Hi." I turn toward the contractor's desk, and there she was, the attractive coworker, smiling and waving at me. The very next day, a fairly attractive customer tells me, "You shouldn't be working in the lumber department, you should be a model." And I believe the day after that, another customer told me the exact same thing. I'm going to ignore how funny of an indirect insult that comes across as to anyone who works in lumber, to give a third and final example that the universe is probably trying to tell me something. The next year I worked at the other big box hardware place. You know, the ones with those silly blue vests? One day an attractive woman with an Eastern European accent who appeared in her early 40s seemed a little more friendly than the average customer I chatted with while ringing up. After I rang up her items, she says in that sort of Ukrainian Russian accent, "I have you meet my daughter." As she says this, she opens up her wallet and shows me a picture of this drop-dead gorgeous, basically 20-year-old version of herself. I thought, okay, this has to happen. But of course my supervisors killed all the fun by not allowing me to leave my register to meet this unicorn who is apparently sitting in the car waiting for her mom. I know what you're thinking, and I'm thinking the same thing. But we're all going to forgive late teenager Raymond for not taking advantage of his YOLO opportunity due to the oppressive capitalistic fear of needing to pay bills. The entire point is that the universe was trying to tell me something. So the next year after I moved back in with my family, I decided to begin a portfolio. I discovered a photographer couple on Craigslist back when the site was used to find something other than your own kidnapper. We did a TF photo shoot, which stands for trade for, and for you aspiring models wondering how to break into the industry, this is the type of photo shoot you look for. TF shoots are ones in which photographers use you to expand their photography portfolios in exchange for providing you with free images that would otherwise cost you hundreds if you were to go to a typical photography service. The easiest way to do this is to sign up for an online network that enables models, actors, photographers, makeup artists, and all other kinds of talent to find each other. And be sure to read any model release form before you sign it so images of you don't end up in weird places without your consent. Anyway, after that initial photo shoot to get my modeling portfolio started, I decided not to immediately pursue modeling and instead waited until the next year. Miraculously, Craigslist was still useful because I used it to find a meetup group where photographers and models regularly came together in workshops to do large TF photo shoots. This is when I began to take modeling a little more seriously. Let's talk about photo shoots. In my experience, this is where most of the fun is. They're laid back because you don't need to worry about dress rehearsals, plus you get direction from photographers. Almost every friend I made during my modeling days I met at a photo shoot, whether it was a photographer or a fellow model. This networking of course led to even more opportunities for portfolio expansion and even more opportunities to gain experience. During that first meetup photo shoot, coordinators for an upcoming fashion show held an audition where models could walk down a runway in hopes of being selected for the show. I of course did this and got selected, which led to the first of several fashion shows that I walked in between fall 2009 and spring 2010. My main feeling about fashion shows: I didn't really care for them, and not because I'm wearing guy liner in this pic. Fashion shows come with a lot of pressure that photo shoots just don't have. Some shows I had to do multiple rehearsals and fittings weeks prior to the event, on top of the obligatory walkthrough rehearsal the day of the event. And no, I didn't get to keep any clothing, and most of it was far too exotic for me to want anyway. So in 2010, I shifted my focus from fashion to the type of modeling where I made almost all of my money as a model. Promotional modeling is a type of modeling where you get paid by a talent agency to work a one-off event. Often you're at a booth or section of a large event promoting a brand. For example, at San Francisco Pride in 2010, I promoted a Las Vegas brand that was basically a camp for adults. The vast majority of these promo gigs aren't particularly exciting, but it is perhaps the easiest way for models to make money. My most notable promotional gig came in 2011 at the MI6 Video Game Marketing Awards ceremony in San Francisco. At this event, I air quote co-hosted an awards show with Amy Schumer. I put that in air quotes because while we did share the stage, she was the actual host, but I could have lied to you because my name tag was the only other one that said host. Basically, my job was to walk onto the stage and hand her the awards as she announced the winners. Now, there were a couple of funny things about this event. One is that there's absolutely no photo or video evidence that this event even took place. Another is that I never previously heard of Amy Schumer before that event. A third is my interaction with her. When one of the event coordinators introduced me to her, she was in the chair getting her hair and makeup done. After I shook hands with Amy Schumer, she looks me up and down, cracks a slightly perverted smile, and says, "I'm gonna flirt with you on stage." So as the event begins, I walk onto the stage to hand her the cue cards, and as I walk back off the stage, she says to the crowd, "Isn't he handsome, everyone?" And that's probably the only time I ever got a cheer from a crowd that had nothing to do with sports or some stupid graduation. In hindsight, I probably should have exchanged information with Amy since I'm certain this is right before the moment her career took off. Moving on to acting in t-shirts. The acting and t-shirts aren't related, I just didn't know where to put the t-shirts part, so I added it to the acting part. Basically, in 2010 I modeled tees for headline shirts back when they showed the faces of their models, and I actually got to keep some of these shirts. Anyway, about my acting. In 2012 I was in a music video in which I played the role of a cheating boyfriend. Due to the mild embarrassment over my bad acting, you're all free to find the video on your own, but needless to say, there's probably a reason they never contacted me again to make another video. I'm definitely not made for Hollywood. And with that, let's move on to the frustrations I experienced as a model, or at least the ones that stand out. In 2010, I participated in an editorial magazine photo shoot in which I was supposed to be paid $150. I never got that money. What made this particularly frustrating is that at the time I had already failed to get signed by every single modeling agency I submitted for, and I knew that had I been represented at the time, they not only would have made sure I got paid, but it would have been way more than $150. Many of the other models in the photo shoot with me I recognized from websites of some of the more reputable Northern California modeling agencies. Not only did each of them probably get paid, but they likely got something in the thousands, because it pays to be represented. The other frustration that stands out to me is when I finally did get signed. When I graduated from UC Berkeley at the end of summer 2012, I moved back home to Sacramento and soon after submitted images to Cast Images. Cast Images is a modeling agency in Sacramento, and it is one of the more reputable ones in Northern California. In fact, they represented some of the models in the photo shoot I didn't get paid for. They contacted me to meet with them in person, and they signed me on the day I came in, which I naively considered to be a big break. The agency dropped me a month later. Why? Being a recent college grad, I couldn't afford the required photo shoots and training needed to build my portfolio, since the agency required models to pay for their contractors. I got a seasonal job and told the agents I could afford it soon, but they still dropped me after 1 month despite telling me on the day they signed me that I had a 4-month probation period. I'm not sure why they even bothered telling me this because it was only 1 month into my contract when they asked me if I had completed the photo shoots and training. I said not yet, and they responded by saying something like, I believe their exact words were, "We'll tear up your profile and you could resubmit at a later date." This was without warning. You would think the professional thing to do would be to give an ultimatum along the lines of, okay, we'll give you until X date to complete this, or we'll drop you. That way, perhaps I could have been more aggressive in inconveniencing those around me for help to make this happen. Of course, in hindsight, I realize this is probably the common power play in modeling, where the dynamic is such that agents are like the farmers and models are like the expendable cattle that they dangle in front of brands with large checkbooks. The last frustration I will get to in the next section. From the beginning of 2013 to the latter half of 2016, I pretty much gave up on modeling to focus on building my design career. However, in November 2016, several months after getting laid off from my full-time design position, I submitted images to basically every reputable modeling agency in the Bay Area. Most rejected me immediately, which is not unlike most non-modeling jobs that I've applied to over the years. 2 weeks went by, then a month. By then I realized that the few, if any, remaining agencies that didn't reject me immediately had no intention of contacting me. Then to my surprise, I received an email that gave me a glimmer of hope that some modeling life remained. Of course, that hope vanished not too long after meeting with the agency. The entire experience felt like a trip to the doctor's office. First, Due to high volume, I had to wait an additional month before they could see me. Second, the arrival instructions made it clear not to be late, so I arrived 15 minutes early and waited those 15 minutes, and waited another 15 minutes before they remembered that I was sitting there in their waiting room. An assistant walked me into an empty room and measured my height before doing anything else. She said 73, perfect, handed me the script to a commercial, told me that the models would be right with me, and then bolted out of the room. Where have I experienced all of this before? The agents came in, heard my dry monologue that probably sounds a lot like what I sound like right now, asked me a few questions about myself, and then left the room. They returned to tell me they're too concerned with my lack of recent modeling experience to accept me into an agency that generally represents models with more recent modeling experience. I mean, the resume I submitted had nothing on it from after 2012, so I don't know what they were expecting. Of course, this is the same agency that rejected me in early 2013 because, according to them, my waist was too small. Yep, you heard that correctly. In early 2013, I submitted images to them that were enticing enough for them to request more images, and then when I sent them more images, they determined by eyeball that my waist was too small. What are you gonna do? They even said over the phone, you're in very good shape. If you're an aspiring model and you could deal with the temperamental nature of these agencies, then maybe traditional modeling is for you. Otherwise, Instagram modeling is probably good enough.